Some secrets don't stay in the shadows. When 23-year-old Sam's body was found, it all started. Every murder has a perpetrator, but who is really guilty? Behind every confrontation, there is a secret being kept. The trace of the crime is not only in the hands, but in the darkest corners of the mind. Get ready to question freedom, responsibility, truth, and learn about the underlying psychology behind all crime. In the arid streets of New Mexico, no matter how scorching the sun, some mysteries remain in the shadows, and when you least expect it, even the quietest whispers echo with blood. When the lifeless body of 23-year-old Sam was found in a remote corner of a construction site on the outskirts of Albuquerque, the city once again fell silent. From the outside, it could have looked like an ordinary murder, but this was not just a murder. It was a violent explosion of secrets from the past, broken bonds, and repressed emotions. It wasn't until after he graduated from high school that Sam found his sexual identity. He was now a trans man. Friends he hadn't seen in years were unaware of this change, including Emily. But it wasn't just his own identity that Sam carried inside. After finding his sexual identity, Sam resurfaced the unrequited and obsessive love he had buried in the past. Emily, John's sister, was quiet and withdrawn. She had a close friendship with Sam in high school, but underneath this friendship, Sam had different feelings for Emily. However, Sam had never been able to express his feelings for Emily. During those years, Sam suppressed his feelings for Emily, but after discovering her identity, he turned his suppressed feelings into an obsessive pursuit. Emily didn't realize it at first, but in recent months, she had been receiving secret calls, strange texts, a silhouette in front of her house at night. Emily was restless now. She couldn't sleep, especially at night, mistaking every shadow for Sam and jumping up when the doorbell rang. This situation became unbearable for him. She couldn't even tell her friends about it. Her loneliness was deepening. Emily was returning from a party one night when Sam cornered her in a secluded corner. A silence where thoughts collided with curiosity and fear. Sam's threatening words showed the dark side of her repressed love. Emily ran, screaming at the reactionary atmosphere. Carl, who was on his way home at the time, was the only witness. Carl was a neighborhood teenager with no direct ties to John's gang, but he knew them well. On his way home that night, Carl heard Emily screaming and saw Sam running away. And the next day he told John that his sister had been disturbed by someone. Hearing this, John's big brother protectionism kicked in. But it was a protection that would be fueled not by justice, but by revenge. John, a man who grew up in the center of crime and hatred, his personality shaped by his father's indifference, his mind clouded by drugs, took another form when he became the head of a gang. Talking to Emily, John had the details of the case and all the information about who Sam was. Sam's obsession with Emily had become, in John's eyes, an unforgivable threat to his family. John's rage would take this case beyond a simple murder. As the gang leader, John was of course going to let someone else do the dirty work. His cousin, Patrick had lost his parents in a car accident, so he and John had grown up like brothers since childhood. Patrick was 21 years old when he went to prison for extortion and battery. The cold walls of Rikers Island prison taught him not only survival, but also callousness. When he was released 5 years later, there was no trace of human emotion left in him. When Patrick got out of prison, he was ready for all the orders he would give out of loyalty to John. The moment had come. John asked Patrick to find Sam and bring him to the farm. Patrick acted on John's directive. He called Jennifer and said they needed to meet. Jennifer was the gang's arms supplier and could be trusted for intelligence because she was well connected. Patrick asked Jennifer for a pistol and a silencer. Through her connections, Jennifer gave Patrick Sam's address and the necessary tools of the crime. Patrick then went to Sam's doorstep, in the evening of that day. Sam was about to go out again that night to observe Emily, but he was unaware of the danger waiting for him outside. The danger was Patrick himself. Sam went outside and walked to the end of the street. Patrick was following Sam like a dark shadow. He put the barrel of the gun to Sam's back at the corner of the street. Sam was surprised and scared. Patrick whispered in Sam's ear to go quietly to the car. Sam did as Patrick told him in shock. Just as he was about to get into the car, Patrick hit Sam on the back of the neck with the butt of the gun and knocked him unconscious. He took his cell phone from Sam's pocket and threw it in the trash can. He got behind the wheel and started driving towards the farm. When they reached the farm, John met them with angry eyes. They took Sam out of the car and took him to an empty room on the farm. They tied Sam to a chair. The musty smell of rotten wood and the pale light from a flickering light bulb made it even creepier. They poured a bucket of water over Sam's face and woke him up. Sam barely opened his eyes, trying to understand what had happened. Just then he was punched in the face, and before he could recover from the shock, more punches followed, the sounds echoing around the room. Silent witnesses to the torture. Emily tried to sleep in her apartment, oblivious to what had happened. But behind her eyelids, the horror of that night was still there, and it wouldn't go away. She didn't even dare to turn off the bedside lamp. The slightest sound made her jump. Her fear was now an integral part of her mind. John and Patrick sat across from Sam and looked at his shocked face with a mocking expression. They looked at Sam's shocked face and started laughing. Sam was still having trouble understanding why he was there. "What do you want from me? Why am I here?" By now, the look on John and Patrick's faces had turned to hatred and hatred. John said, "You are here because of what you did to my sister." Sam was enlightened after hearing this sentence. Sam bowed his head, regretting what he had done. The silence in the room was broken by John's fists. John's rage and Sam's screams of pain filled the room again. Would this event, which John could not accept, be the end of Sam? After prolonged torture, Sam was almost unable to speak. John, covered in blood and sweat, told Patrick to finish Sam off. As the first light of the morning dawned, Patrick put Sam in the car, and they drove to the construction site in the middle of nowhere. John's anger had not subsided, and he began to smash things all around. Patrick put a hand on John's shoulder, gave him a look that assured him this would be the end of it, and got behind the wheel. John stared after the car, which was now in the dust with a dull stare. Patrick couldn't help the hatred in his heart as he drove. He was shouting hateful words at Sam. Finally, they reached the construction site. Sam felt that it was all over now. There was a small shred of hope left in him, and he spent his last breath apologizing to Patrick and expressing his regret. But Sam's efforts were in vain. He didn't know that Patrick had no human emotion left in him. When Patrick let Sam out of the car, the sounds of dogs and birds echoing all around were the only thing that broke the silence. As they walked into the construction site, Patrick told Sam to stop and get on his knees. He slammed the last shred of hatred in Sam's face, and even though Sam was sobbing, it wasn't enough to affect Patrick. The silent scream of death echoed around. The finger that committed the murder was Patrick's, but the mindset that pulled the trigger was John's. Sam's last breath mingled with the arid deserts of New Mexico. In the morning, the construction foreman who came to work saw the body and called the police. When the police arrived, it took them a while to put the pieces together. The case began to be investigated. Emily, who had heard about it on the news, called the police and said that Sam had been harassing her. The police analyzed the details of the incident through CCTV footage and found that Carl had been there on the day of the abuse. Carl testified that he told John about the incident, and the police found the culprits. When John was arrested, his statement was brief. "My only regret was the delay." Following this, the judge sentenced him to 20 years in prison, along with mandatory psychological support. Patrick showed no remorse in his testimony. It was clear he would get 5 more years. Jennifer got a reduced sentence, thanks to her cooperation. Carl's testimony helped solve the case, but for Emily, nothing was ever the same. It wasn't Sam's love that frightened her. It was the silence of everyone who saw how that love became a weapon. In Sam's story, he is no longer just a murder victim. He was the echo of every silenced identity, every repressed emotion, and every ignored human being. Every murder has a perpetrator, but the question is, who really commits the crime? Is it the hand that holds the gun? Or the repressed emotions that grow in the depths of the mind? This story reveals not just a murder, but how the anger and obsession that accumulate in the darkest corners of the human psyche can become explosive. This story is a psychological tragedy in which love, identity, anger, and trauma are intertwined. Each character is a symbol of conflict, each behavior an echo of the unconscious. Let's start with Freud's destructive theory. According to Freud, repressed impulses accumulate in the unconscious and emerge destructively in the appropriate environment. These impulses are not only sexual or aggressive, but also related to identity, desire, and love. What one represses does not disappear. It only grows in shadow. In this story, Sam's obsessive love, John's destructive rage, and Patrick's lack of empathy are manifestations of these repressed impulses and unresolved traumas. Do you think the biggest threat to an individual is the outside world or their own shadows? While you discuss in the comments, let's examine Sam's profile. Sam, a portrait on identity, repression, and connection. Sam's story is the psychological wreckage of a search for identity. His parents taught Sam how it should be, in a traditional and emotionally unspoken environment. In such a family structure, Sam's emotional expressions may have been suppressed. His acceptance of his trans identity only after high school reveals the extent of this suppression. His first masculine feelings towards Emily were perhaps the first time Sam felt himself as a subject. Emily may have become for him both a representation of the past and a symbol of his desire for freedom. Sam's attachment style may be anxious. Such individuals both seek closeness and may become obsessive because of their extreme fear of rejection. This attachment style can turn into overly controlling and obsessive behaviors, especially in a young individual experiencing an identity conflict. Sam, as someone who has not been accepted by society, may be seeking not only Emily's approval, but also that of society. Therefore, his love for Emily also becomes a search for identity affirmation. Was Sam's obsessive attachment to Emily a love affair, or a tragic reflection of his struggle to find himself? Jung's archetypes, shadow, persona, and anima. According to Jung's archetypes, Sam represents the shadow archetype, his repressed desires. His social misfits and identity conflicts follow him like a shadow. Emily could be his anima, the representative of his repressed feminine side, the embodiment of his past and emotions. While Patrick takes violence as a duty with the archetype of the warrior on duty, John is a failed hero. Even though he tries to be a hero, he succumbs to his anger and surrenders to his dark side. Do you think that the dark side in a person is only what they repress, or is it the silence of society that feeds it? Attachment theory, the scars of each character. Anxious avoidant attachment tends to sacrifice himself in search of love. Fear of abandonment can make him manipulative and obsessive. Seems to be securely attached, but may be developing avoidant attachment due to trauma after events. He probably has unresolved traumatic attachment. The lack of attention from his father suppresses his superego and releases his aggressive impulses. An example of disorganized attachment He suppresses his emotions to cope with violence. His empathy is atrophied. Do you think trauma only remains in the past, or is it the invisible architect of our behavior? Existential and behavioral approach, the chain of what if. If Emily had recognized Sam's behavior earlier and clearly set boundaries, Sam's obsession might not have run so deep. If John had received psychological support at an early age, he could have built a different identity instead of turning his traumas into violence. If Patrick had a rehabilitation process for his post-prison traumas, he could have rebuilt his identity with support, not violence. If Sam hadn't had to suppress his identity, his love for Emily wouldn't have taken such a tragic turn. These assumptions form the basis of the existentialist approach: freedom, choice, and responsibility. Each individual is responsible for his or her choices, but the shadow of the past and the silence of society can distort this freedom. Do you think we are really free, or are our choices echoes of our repressed pasts? Conclusion: repression, trauma, and social silence. The relational traces of Freud's theory of repression, Jung's shadow and attachment, theories and existentialist responsibilities are intertwined in this story. Each character confronts society, the past, and their repressed identity in their own internal war. The perpetrator of the crime is not just one person. Society's silence, lack of therapy, lack of empathy are also accomplices. Who do you think is to blame in this story? Sam, who was left alone with his obsessions? Is it John, who was left alone with his trauma? Or the silent society that turns a blind eye to all this? In the end, every shadow hides a story, and every story hides a mind. If this story made you question what lies beneath the surface, then maybe you're already thinking like a detective of the psyche. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, for the mind behind the next story might be